Welcome to our US Briefing Show. Today, we're diving into some fascinating updates. First up, the IMF reports that US tariffs haven't hit the global economy as hard as many feared. With trade agreements and exemptions in place, the world is experiencing only modest disruptions, and global growth is slightly upgraded for 2024. It's a bit of good news amidst ongoing trade tensions. Next, we explore Trump's latest diplomatic challenge, trying to bring peace to Ukraine. While he had success brokering peace in Gaza, Ukraine's conflict with Russia is proving much more complex. With Russia's long-standing opposition and the threat of escalation, Trump's path to peace looks tricky. Will strength and real action be enough? Finally, the world's shipping lanes are feeling the heat as China and the US impose rival port fees, causing ripple effects across global trade. Plus, China's military is training soldiers with traditional mental calculation techniques. Talk about blending history with modern tech. Stay tuned for these dynamic developments. Please continue to watch for more details. CNN reports that despite higher tariffs imposed by the United States, the global economy has so far experienced a smaller impact than initially anticipated. The IMF has slightly upgraded its growth forecasts for both the world and the US, citing recent trade agreements that have lowered US tariffs from April highs to between 10% and 20%. Businesses have responded by increasing imports ahead of tariff hikes and rerouting supply chains, which has helped mitigate immediate damage. However, the IMF warns that trade tensions persist, and the full effects of these tariffs may only become clear over time, especially as US importers might pass the costs on to consumers. President Trump's trade war, characterized by fluctuating tariffs and negotiations, continues to cast a shadow over global trade, with recent escalations involving China threatening to impose a 100% tariff amid disputes over rare earth exports, underscoring the ongoing uncertainty in international markets. CNN delves into the complexities of Trump's approach to ending conflicts, particularly in Ukraine, contrasting it with his efforts in Gaza. While Trump has shown a willingness to leverage American strength to influence conflicts, his tactics in Ukraine are hampered by the lack of a clear, achievable deal with Russia. Unlike Israel, where Trump managed to persuade an ally to cease fighting, Russia remains a formidable adversary, reliant on China and resistant to American pressure. Trump's attempts to impose sanctions and threaten military aid, such as the potential deployment of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, reveal the limits of his influence. Ukrainian President Zelensky's recent signals about the possible use of these missiles highlight the high-stakes game of diplomacy and deterrence, with Trump's credibility on the line. The lesson from recent months underscores that tangible, physical strength, rather than bluster, is essential to compel Russia into negotiations, a reality that Trump must confront if he hopes to achieve peace. South China Morning Post details the disruptive impact of China and the US imposing rival port fees, which threaten to destabilize global shipping. China's retaliatory fees, effective immediately, target US-built vessels and those with significant US ownership, potentially affecting a substantial portion of the global fleet, especially in sectors like dry bulk and container shipping. While China has exempted domestically built vessels, the new tariffs could lead to increased volatility in shipping rates and higher costs for U.S. agricultural exports and iron ore traders with U.S. ties. Conversely, U.S. port fees are expected to primarily impact container carriers, with some estimates projecting $3.2 billion in charges by 2026. The interconnected nature of the shipping industry means that these tariffs could prompt a shift in vessel deployment, with China's fleet, particularly China-built ships, gaining short-term demand. Nonetheless, both countries have signaled that these measures are subject to negotiation and adjustment, leaving the door open for future policy shifts that could either escalate or de-escalate the current maritime tensions. The Associated Press reports that the U.S. Supreme Court has dismissed Alex Jones' appeal concerning the staggering $1.4 billion defamation verdict related to his false claims that the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting was a hoax. This decision leaves in place the hefty judgment against Jones, who had previously failed to comply with court orders and to provide crucial evidence to the families of the victims. Despite filing for bankruptcy and attempting to liquidate his assets, including a bid from satirical outlet The Onion, legal proceedings continue, with some of Jones' personal property being sold off to satisfy the damages. The case underscores the severity of the court's rare default ruling and the ongoing efforts to recover damages, highlighting the profound consequences of Jones' persistent denial of the tragedy and its impact on the victims' families. The South China Morning Post highlights escalating tensions between China and the United States, focusing on a deepening shipping dispute and Beijing's strategic military innovations. China has imposed sanctions on a South Korean company accused of restricting its maritime and shipbuilding industries, signaling a significant escalation in regional tensions. Meanwhile, China's military is employing ancient techniques like the human abacus, a mental calculation method, to prepare soldiers for scenarios where high-tech devices might fail, illustrating a fascinating blend of tradition and modern military training. Satellite images suggest China is making significant progress on its fourth aircraft carrier, a testament to its expanding naval power. Additionally, AI has been used to restore a 1,600-year-old Chinese love scroll, symbolizing a cultural revival that bridges centuries through cutting-edge technology. Yahoo's opinion piece paints a dire picture of the current American legal landscape, emphasizing the profound influence of Donald Trump and the Supreme Court on the rule of law. Experts and former officials express alarm at how the Justice Department and judiciary have been transformed into tools for political power, with many fearing that Trump's second term has accelerated this erosion. The court's controversial use of the shadow docket, a process that allows for swift rulings without detailed reasoning, has further undermined judicial independence, often favoring the executive over established legal principles. Prominent justices have publicly rebuked lower courts, and some legal scholars compare Chief Justice Roberts' stance to the infamous Dred Scott decision, suggesting that the entire system teeters on the brink of a constitutional crisis. Despite Barrett's denial, the consensus is that the nation faces a historic legal emergency, with the resilience of lower courts being the last safeguard against systemic collapse. Fox News, as reported by Mediaite, is expected to stand firm against the Pentagon's new media restrictions, joining other major networks like CNN, NBC, ABC, and CBS in outright rejecting Pete Hegseth's controversial "in brief for media members" pledge. This directive, introduced under the Trump administration, aims to severely limit journalistic activities inside the Pentagon, forbidding journalists from soliciting tips, photographing, or even sketching what they observe. The network's coordinated response underscores a collective defense of press freedom, with sources indicating that Fox News, where Hegseth once worked for nearly 10 years, will not comply with the draconian rules, potentially setting the stage for a confrontation with the Pentagon. The situation has sparked widespread criticism from media outlets and press associations, with the Pentagon's own press association condemning the policy as an attack on transparency, while Hegseth's tenure has been marked by increasing hostility toward journalists and a fixation on leaks. This standoff represents one of the most significant clashes between the military and the free press in recent decades, highlighting the ongoing tension over press access and government transparency. Deutsche Welle explores the waning influence of Western powers on African democracies amid aid cuts and democratic backsliding across the continent. As Western funding from organizations like the United Nations and the African Union diminishes, concerns grow over the sustainability of democratic norms in countries such as Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya, where elections are increasingly marred by repression, suppression of opposition, and political violence. Observers note that authoritarian practices are emboldened by the decline in Western oversight and support, with elections often perceived as mere formalities rather than genuine democratic contests. The return of Donald Trump to the U.S. presidency is also seen as a factor that emboldens authoritarian regimes globally, with critics pointing to his policies that undermine democratic institutions and human rights initiatives. Despite these setbacks, some experts argue that democracy remains the preferred governance model among African citizens, emphasizing the importance of grassroots education and internal reform rather than reliance on Western models. The article advocates for African-led democratic development and calls for greater local oversight of elections, challenging the notion that Western influence is the primary driver of democracy on the continent. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.